Hello, welcome to Tier Nerd, and this is another tier list. This time I'm going to do a tier list for the Suikoden series. I think that's how you pronounce it, maybe Suikoden or Suikoden, and then the Wild Arms series. Um, so I'm putting these two together because they're lesser known, but they're amazing. They're both great franchises and very interesting. I highly recommend to any JRPG fan that these are great franchises to get into. And I haven't even played all the games. Like I played, there are Suikoden games that are newer that I haven't played, and then there's some Wild Arm games that were made later that I haven't played either. But but from what I have played, I have 6 Suikoden games and I have 5 Wild Arm games. So let's start with Suikoden. So first we have Suikoden 1 right here. So I heard one of the reasons why it wasn't very popular when it came out was because it came out around the same time as Final Fantasy VII. So Final Fantasy VII stole all the popularity from this game. So it got kind of, it didn't get noticed back then, but it was an amazing game. And I think I want to give it A tier because it was really fun to play. It's very, it's kind of short. You could probably beat it in 20 hours, I think, like maybe on a first playthrough, maybe a little longer, but there's so much to do. There's so many characters, and you build a castle, and pretty much the thing about all Suikoden games is that you're going to end up with 108 characters, and some of them are in your party, and some of them are like a merchant or something, like a weaponsmith in your castle, and you just go around collecting all these characters and uh, that's one of the main things about the game is that you get this castle and it's just really cool and you keep building this castle and you can see it grow throughout the game, and it's just a very fun game, kind of different. Like all of them just take like kind of like it's about war. It's about you're running a castle and you're trying to defeat some enemy kingdom. So Suikoden always has that interesting approach, and the storyline is usually great, from like pretty much all these games. So it's just a very solid franchise in general. So Suikoden One started the series off really well, on the PlayStation. Suikoden One, so definitely A tier. Suikoden Two, I think Suikoden Two is amazing. I don't know if it's quite S tier. A lot of Suikoden fans would just immediately put it in S tier, say it's like the best game, one of the best games ever. And it is an amazing game. Like it's a very very powerful game. Suikoden 2 just did everything Suikoden 1 did, but just better and just amazing storyline, just so much depth and very memorable characters. Um, and good soundtrack as always. Like Suikoden games have good music in general. And I don't know what else to say, but yeah, it's pretty much just built on the first game. Just did everything. It just improved on everything. But I don't know if I would still put it in S tier. I'll have to think about it, but it's pretty high up. I mean, something's gonna have to be in S tier, but for now, I'm gonna put it in A tier. Suikoden three, Suikoden three. So this is on the PS2 now, and it was a good game. It's longer. Like Suikoden 1 and 2 are a bit shorter. Suikoden 3 is really long, and you have like three or four different main characters, and it branches off, and it's very unique. It's even among Suikoden games, it is very unique, interesting game. I don't know where I'd rank it. Maybe higher than Suikoden 1, maybe lower than it. Yeah, like I don't know. Suikoden 3 is just it was still fun. Like it's still a fun game. I think it's still A tier. I wouldn't put it in B tier, but maybe lower than Suikoden 1. I'm not quite sure where to put it. Now Suikoden 4. Now Suikoden 4, I'd definitely say B tier at best. It definitely does not deserve to be an A tier. Some people would even put it in C tier, to be honest, because it's probably one of the worst games in the franchise. Which, I mean, it's an amazing franchise. So when it's the worst game in the franchise, that still doesn't mean it's a bad game. But it's the thing is, this is the first game I played in the franchise, and I never finished it. I got bored with it, and I got stuck. Even though it's a pretty short game, actually, I got stuck on the final boss because I didn't know what I was doing. And so this is my first experience at Suikoden. So I thought I didn't really play the franchise, and it wasn't until several years afterwards that I actually played Suikoden One, and then I realized that this is an amazing franchise. And then I started playing all the other games. But my first impression wasn't the best because I started with one of the worst games. So if you pick the worst game in the franchise to start with, then you'll have a bad first impression, obviously. So Suikoden 4, B tier. It's kind of weird. You're on a ship, so you travel the world around. You travel to these different islands on a ship, and it's a little different. Your castle is the ship, so it takes a very different approach to the castle aspect of the Suikoden games. But you're still getting 108 characters. Still the same old stuff. Not linear. The Suikoden games. They're not very linear. Like there's a lot of side quests. There's like the main storyline is usually very short for these games, but there's a ton of side quests always. So Suikoden 4 is probably more of a B tier for me. I didn't think it was that great, so I'll put it in a B tier. Now Suikoden 5, this is where my opinion is going to be a little different than most people. Most people that like Suikoden, they put Suikoden 5 probably up here with Suikoden 2. For me, I didn't really, maybe it's because it was later, and I just didn't really think it was that great compared to all the others. So I think I'll put it in B tier, probably higher than Suikoden 4, but I did not think Suikoden 5 was that amazing. It was still fun to play, long game, probably like 60 hours or so, or maybe even 70 hours, and there's a lot to do. But but because of that, it felt kind of tedious. Whereas the other games, like Suikoden 1 and 2, like they're fast. 1, 2, and 4 are very short, or generally short games. You just can speed through them, and they don't get tedious. 3 and 5 are a bit longer, so you have to. It's easier to get bored with 3 and 5, for example. So 5, still the same old stuff. Still, your main character is a prince. Same old stuff that you see in a lot of these other games, but it's not quite as good as the first two. So that's Suikoden 5. Then we have Suikoden Tactics, which it's sort of like a spin-off. Which Suikoden Tactics is actually sort of like a sequel slash. It's actually like a prequel and a sequel. It's kind of weird. It takes place roughly at the same time as Suikoden 4, and you actually see a lot of the same characters as Suikoden 4. So Suikoden Tactics is like a spin-off of 4, and it's kind of interesting, but honestly, it's not that great. Like I really do want to put it in C tier. It is kind of subpar in a lot of ways. It's got some good aspects, but it's a tactical strategy RPG. So it is a little different than the other Suikoden games, which are just regular JRPGs. But it's just not quite as good as the other games in the series. So I'm gonna put it in C tier. It's kind of lacking in a lot of ways. So that's Suikoden series. So it's very, very solid franchise, as you can see. You got my A tier games, B tier, C tier, all of that. So I have no S tier, so I might change that. So let's start with Wild Arms. Now, Wild Arms is a very interesting, very vastly different, like a very diverse series. That's probably the right word, diverse. Every game is different from the other games. Like in Suikoden games and in most franchises, there's like when you go from one game to the next, there's usually not some crazy switch to something else. But in Wild Arms, you'll see some similarities, but there's so many different game mechanics employed in every game, and they're just such unique games, very interesting, and they're very original. They're very good at that. And the Wild Arms is a very interesting blend where they blend in like the West, the Wild West, with JRPG, and it's so weird. And at the same time, they have like a flying dragon, and it's just so weird. It's just a very interesting series where they just mix a bunch of stuff together, and it just happens to work. Kind of like Kingdom Hearts mixed Final Fantasy with Disney, and it just somehow worked. It doesn't make sense, but it worked. So Wild Arms is a great series. These are all highly ranked games, I would say. So I mean, I like all of them. So Wild Arms 1, the first one, B tier or A tier. I mean, if I'm putting, I mean, it's at least higher than Suikoden 3, I think. It's kind of hard to decide where I would put it. I mean, Suikoden 1 was already pretty epic. So I think I'll put Wild Arms around here. Definitely A tier game. So I had a lot of fun with it. You have 3 characters, and I don't know what to say. PlayStation game. Very just a lot of fun mechanics, a lot of side quests. That's the one thing about the Wild Arm games. They have a lot of side quests, a lot of fun side quests, a lot of optional bosses, like a lot of tough optional bosses and secret bosses and post game. Like, and they do a very good job of it. Like they Wild Arms, they do a really good job of having a fun post game, or just like all this optional material and things you can do in the game. So yeah, really fun. Wild Arms 2 also just adds in a whole bunch of just completely different mechanics, switches to force points for everything, and it's just weird. Like I can't even begin to explain just the battle system, but every game is just so different from the other games. And Wild Arms 2, I have very fond memories of 2. I think I would put it probably higher than Wild Arms 1. I don't know if it would be higher than Suikoden 1 though. Like I don't know. They're all these games are really close. They're all really good games. So it's really hard to decide which one, which one's higher than the other. So I think I'll put it here for now, Wild Arms 2. But it's pretty epic game, and very memorable battle system and everything. And the final boss is just, I won't spoil it, but just a very interesting concept for a final boss. Then we have Wild Arms 3. Wild Arms 3 is kind of like an oddball. This is where you start getting, there's a lot of mini games, and like I couldn't even begin to explain it, but like you'd have to look at it. Wild Arms 3, like I don't know, it's kind of a unique one. Some people I think would really like it, put it really high up, and some people would really not like it. It's kind of, I feel it's like it's more divisive. I don't know if it's better than 1 or 3 or 2. Maybe like around here. I couldn't really decide where to put it, but I think it's still great. Some people might put it a little lower in the B tier. Amazing post game. Wild Arms 3 also had the craziest final dungeon that took me like 3 hours to finish, and I couldn't save the entire time. Like it has a crazy post game final dungeon that just takes forever to finish, and you're not allowed to save the entire time. And if you teleport, then you have to start all over. It's crazy, but yeah, and had a lot of fun. But still, it was just an amazing challenge. Now, Wild Arms 4, this is where things get a little weird. Wild Arms 4. Wild Arms 4 is one of those rare games where I used to really hate it. Like, if you asked me the first time I played it, I would probably put it in the C tier because it was just so weird of a game. They switched to a hex system, and there's all these jumping mini games and stuff, and the main character is like 14, and they just did so many things that just made it feel like a bad game. It was just very hard, and then the post game, I just got stuck and gave up, and it was boring. Now later, many years later, I played it again, and I used the guide, and I kind of knew what I was doing, and I had a lot more fun the second time around. Like I had a different opinion of the game the second time I played it, many years later. So I had a lot more fun, and I still had to use some save states to beat some of those mini games because some of those mini games in Wild Arms 4 are just plain stupid. So I would just use save states because they're just that dumb. So Wild Arms 4, the old me would have said C tier. The new me might put it in B tier, or I mean, I did have a lot of fun. But I don't know if it's fair to put it like high up in A tier, high B tier, because it's a little it's a bit divisive of a game, to be honest. I did have fun, but it has severe issues. I might put it higher than Suikoden 3 now. Yeah, maybe around here, but it has its issues. Let's just put it that way. I did put a lot in A tier, so I don't know what I'm gonna do about that, but yeah, there's a lot of good games. Suikoden and Wild Arms, very solid franchises. Then finally we have Wild Arms 5. Wild Arms 5, just like Suikoden 5, I also thought was a bit overrated. I didn't think was that great. It uses the hex system. Post game is great. There's a lot of things you can do. It's fun, but I don't know how to rate it. Wild Arms 4 had fun. Is it better than Wild Arms 5? Should I put it up here? I think it's better than Suikoden 5. Don't know if it's better than Suikoden 3. At this point, it's just kind of hard to decide where you want to put these games. I think maybe around there is fair. Yeah, it really is hard to decide where to put these games. They're all rather solid. The only thing I know is Suikoden 4. Suikoden Tactics is definitely C tier, and 5 and 4 are lower on the scale. So I don't know. I got to put something in S tier, So I mean, I think it's fair to put Suikoden 2 in S tier. I think, I got to put something in S tier. So if I'm going to put something in S tier, it'd be Suikoden 2, and then the rest of them Suikoden 1. I don't know. To be fair, you know what? Honestly, I do think it deserves S tier. I don't think I gave enough games S tier. Like for the Final Fantasy games, I put like 5 of them in S tier. So I think it's only fair to put Suikoden 2 and 1 up here. Then though these Wild Arm games, I think these are more like A tier. Suikoden 3 almost want to move it to B tier, but I think this is fair. Yeah, because I'm just going off memory, but all of these games are very close together, to be honest. Like, it's really hard to decide which one's better. They're just both very solid franchises. Suikoden 1 and 2 are probably like the best out of these that I put here, but Wild Arms has more diversity in the games, in the variety, I think. So, yep, this is my tier list, and I'll be doing more of these.